After my husband found out about my affair, he sent me a box that I didn't expect at all. When I opened it, I was surprised. My name is Priscilla, and at 29, I had spent 2 great years married to Samuel, who is 31. We had built a happy and stable life together until one day, everything changed. I woke up to discover that Samuel had left our home, leaving me sad and confused. I couldn't understand why he would leave so suddenly without a word. The life we had shared was full of happiness. Security had suddenly become a whirlwind of grief and uncertainty, driven by a need for answers. I set out on a desperate journey to find closure in the midst of the turmoil. 3 years ago, Samuel and I first met when I joined the company as an intern. He held a managerial position, and our close working relationship meant we spent a lot of time together, which ignited a strong attraction between us. His handsome features were impossible to ignore, and I could feel the intensity of his gaze and the connection that blossomed between us as we worked together. As we worked on several projects together, our bond deepened. After 8 months of dating, we decided to get married. Then an incredible opportunity came along for Samuel. A RAL company offered him a position that would double his salary, and he eagerly accepted, while I continued at my job waiting for my own promotion. Everything seemed to align perfectly. We chose to move into a larger home, fully aware that our combined salaries would make it feasible. We were excited about this new chapter in our lives, especially with dreams of a future family. However, the sudden change in our finances presented a few challenges, but we stayed optimistic and committed to making things work, believing that better days lay ahead. Just 2 months after moving into our new house, I received a promotion to a role that was a significant shift from my previous job. This new position came with a steep learning curve and required a lot of my time. The mounting pressure led me to turn to alcohol as a way to cope with my mistress. What began as casual drinking quickly morphed into a full-blown roar. I was obsessed with alcohol. Even though Samuel was worried about my drinking, I ignored his concerns and insisted I was in control. As time went on, it became clear that my alcohol dependency was affecting my health, relationships, and overall well-being. I realized that I needed to address the issues that drove me to rely on alcohol as a coping mechanism. I also had to acknowledge the seriousness of my addiction and listen to Samuel's concerns. This marked a crucial turning point in my recovery. I decided to take a break from work to confront my alcohol dependency during my time off. I enrolled in a rehab program that equipped me with the skills I needed to overcome my obsession through therapy and counseling. I also discovered the underlying reasons for my reliance on alcohol and learned healthier ways to cope. It was a tough journey, but with the help of professionals and the unwavering support of loved ones, I managed to overcome my addiction and regain control of my life a year before our wedding date. Samuel proposed, and I happily accepted. After witnessing my darkest moments, he stood by me, proving that he was truly my lifelong partner. As a married couple, we were cherishing some of the happiest times in our lives, but we also realized that the costs of my rehab and our wedding had set back our financial goals. After much discussion, we agreed it was time for me to rehab. I decided to get back to work. I spoke to my company, and they were happy for me to go back to my old role after my 6-month break. When I came back, I was put on a new project led by a guy called Jeremy. Even though Samuel didn't like Jeremy and called him cunning and manipulative, I thought it was important to form my own opinion. I believe in giving people a fair chance. Maybe Jeremy's leadership style was just different from what Samuel had experienced on the first day of our project. I met Jeremy, who was in his mid-B. He was in his 40s and looked really fit and young. I was impressed by his strategic thinking, even though he hadn't prepared much for the project. It was obvious that a lot of women on our team found him attractive. As time went by, it became clear that Jeremy's charm went beyond just his looks. He had a magnetic personality that attracted people effortlessly. This was evident in how he motivated the team. He made sure everyone got along and worked well together, even though there were some initial hiccups. I quickly saw that he was a great addition to the team. Jeremy was great at inspiring the team and making sure everyone was happy, which was really important for keeping us focused and productive. He also helped us stay organized and on schedule with the project. Things had become pretty chaotic recently, so I often found myself I was putting in extra hours after my regular shift to cover for a colleague on maternity leave. I barely had a chance to sit down and catch up with Samuel. He joked that at least I wasn't using alcohol as an escape anymore and seemed pleased to see me busy with my work. I laughed at his remark and assured him I was dedicated to managing my responsibilities. I was still professional, even with everything going on, and told him I was frustrated about not being able to spend quality time together. I promised I'd make it up to him once things calmed down at work. He said he was glad I was aware of my workload and happy to see me engaged. I kissed him and told him how much I cared and wanted to spend time together. I was completely sincere. He smiled and said he knew. You're really devoted to your job, and I appreciate that we'll have plenty of time for each other when things settle. His understanding gave me comfort, and I looked forward to the day we could finally enjoy uninterrupted moments together. I thanked him for his ongoing support and patience, and let him know how much his encouragement meant to me. I promised to focus on our time together as soon as the work situation improved. I thanked him for being so understanding during this busy period. I also told him that I was feeling a bit overwhelmed lately, and he nodded sympathetically. I know your work is important to you, but don't forget to take care of yourself too. We'll plan something special once things calm down, he said. His words made me appreciate his support even more and gave me hope for the future. This past month had been I was carrying most of the responsibility to make sure we met our project deadlines. There were times when Jeremy would get in touch with me outside of working hours to help us stay on track. This often meant working from home and spending a lot of time on my phone, even after getting back from work. Sometimes I would even wake up in the middle of the night to work if I couldn't sleep, exchanging messages and calls with Jeremy at odd hours. Jeremy told me I could reach out to him anytime, day or night, for help so we could work well together. Samuel said he was worried about my late hours and the late night chats I had with Jeremy. I told him it was just a short-term thing that would end when the project was done. He wasn't happy about my late night chats, but I said they were just work. I told Samuel that I'd keep him updated on my progress and that I'd make time for him when the project was finished. I said that I was only working for a short time and that it was important for the project to succeed. I promised to make it up to him as soon as I could. As I got more involved in the project, I spent more time with Jeremy. We shared jokes to relieve tension, and this easygoing attitude carried over into our calls and texts. We developed inside jokes that had us laughing, but soon enough whispers began to spread about Jeremy and me getting too close, especially among the women in the office. I could tell they were jealous when they saw us chatting. These rumors spread like wildfire and reached Samuel one evening. I walked in to find him pacing the room, clearly waiting for Rahling. Before I'd even had a chance to drop my things, he was asking me if there was something going on between Jeremy and me. I quickly reassured him that it was just petty gossip fueled by jealousy and that there was no truth to it. But Samuel didn't seem convinced. He said, "Where there's smoke, there's fire. If everyone thinks they see something, there might be some truth to it." He was upset because he always had a feeling that Jeremy was trouble. I realized I should have kept my distance from him, especially since he had a knack for manipulating others for his own benefit. I was already drained from work and didn't have the energy to discuss something I felt was completely unfounded. I told Samuel it was up to him whether to trust me or the rumors about me. I was frustrated and stormed off to our bedroom, unwilling to waste my time on what I felt was trivial. I was angry at Sam for trusting his colleagues, more than me, which led to a lot of arguments in the days that followed. Samuel kept asking me who I was texting, who I was meeting, and with whom. His questions felt less like he was genuinely concerned and more like he was interrogating me. It was like he was a detective questioning a suspect. I suggested we might need to create some distance if he was going to continue this line of questioning. Samuel fell silent, sulking instead of addressing the real issues. He kept insisting that if I truly cared about our relationship, I should distance myself from Jeremy. I was pretty shocked when he suggested I should distance myself from Jeremy. After all, Jeremy was my supervisor and it was essential for my job. The next day I arrived at work feeling upset and irritated with Samuel for his lack of trust and doubts about my loyalty. Jeremy quickly noticed my sour mood and asked if something was bothering me. I offered a forced smile and returned to my tasks after the last of our colleagues left for the day. Jeremy and I remained to work on a report. He brought me a coffee and said he was willing to listen if I wanted to discuss the argument I had with Samuel. Given the tension that had built up, I started to open up about my frustrations. Jeremy listened attentively and reassured me that things would improve once the situation calmed down. I felt a wave of gratitude and unexpectedly hugged him. It was an impulsive gesture, and suddenly a strange tension hung in the air, leading to an unplanned kiss. We quickly realized what had happened. I had just happened and pulled back, feeling embarrassed. The incident created an awkward atmosphere between us, so we decided to give each other space to process our feelings. We both understood that it was important to handle this situation to protect our friendship and prevent any further complications. Over the next few days, things remained uncomfortable between Jeremy and me, made worse by Samuel's silence. I felt isolated, unable to confide in anyone, and my emotional turmoil was getting to me. My main focus was on repairing my relationship with Samuel. Once that was sorted, I could tackle other issues. By mid-December, our project was almost complete, and work had become a bit more manageable. I decided it was time to make amends with Samuel. I cooked his favorite meal and set the table just how he liked it, hoping to reconcile and put our differences aside. I was aware that Samuel had never been fond of Jeremy, which made it challenging for him to see the situation objectively, especially with the rumors. I told Samuel that I loved him and that Jeremy was just a colleague. I also told him that I needed to work with Jeremy until the project ended because I needed to ease his mind. I promised to switch teams after the project was done. This conversation helped clear up his doubts about my fidelity. It felt good to have an honest discussion with Samuel and resolve our issues. I told him I wanted our bond to get stronger over the next year. I was really happy to have sorted things out with him. We talked about what the future holds and agreed to keep in touch so we can make the transition to the next project as smooth as possible. I thanked him for being so understanding and told him that our relationship would stay strong even if I moved teams. As the New Year's party approached, Jeremy said it would be a good idea to invite Samuel so he can meet my colleagues and put any remaining doubts to rest. I had my doubts, but I thought it was a great idea. I told Samuel that my boss wanted me to go to the party with him. I was really keen to meet the man I often talked about. My goal was to get rid of any suspicions he might have about my relationship with Jeremy. I wanted us to enjoy the evening together as we once did. Samuel would also have friends and former colleagues there, which would be a great chance for us to catch up and chat about old times. I was really looking forward to introducing him to my boss and colleagues. I was sure that our colleagues would see how happy we were and that they would understand that there was nothing going on between us. It was important for me to show how strong our relationship was and to enjoy a relaxed evening together in the days before the party. I made sure to tell Samuel that the rumors about an affair were completely false. I wanted him to feel secure in our relationship so that he could enjoy the party without worrying. I also thought that introducing him to my boss and colleagues would make our bond even stronger and show everyone how happy we were. As the night went on and the drinks started flowing, I found myself having another drink after a long break. It felt refreshing, and I was sure I could handle my intake without going back to my old habits. I was sitting between Jeremy and Samuel, who I made sure I kept an eye on how many drinks I had. It felt a bit suffocating. It was New Year's Eve, and I wanted to celebrate without feeling restricted. I understood that he was trying to stop me from relapsing, but in that moment I was too drunk to think clearly. All I could focus on was that Samuel was ruining the festive mood, so I turned to Jeremy and started a conversation. We were both I was drunk and had lost my sense of boundaries. I remembered that night when I accidentally kissed Jeremy. We decided to move on from it and pretend it never happened. After that night, my memories became a blur. When I woke up the next morning, I was shocked to find that most of our belongings were missing. At first, I could hardly believe it was our house. It looked like a shell of itself. It felt as though we'd been robbed while we were asleep. My head was throbbing with a hangover as I began searching for Samuel. As I walked through the house, I quickly realized that not only was Samuel gone, but almost everything except for the bed had vanished. I tried calling him, but his phone was turned off. I was in a panic. I splashed some water on my face, desperately trying to sober up. On the table, I found a note from Samuel. I read the note, which said, "Congratulations on a new year filled with new beginnings and new people." I was in shock. I didn't know if this was a joke or if I was really experiencing this nightmare. I kept reading the note over and over, feeling confused and disbelieving. I felt abandoned and frantically searched for clues or explanations, hoping to make sense of this bewildering situation. My heart sank as I grasped that the note indicated Samuel had left me without warning or explanation. Questions swirled in my mind, each one heavier than the last. Why would he choose to start the new year by abruptly ending our relationship? I felt a weight of uncertainty and sorrow settle on me, leaving me longing for closure and answers. I decided to sit down and reflect on what could have caused such a drastic change in behavior. I remembered how we'd started drinking shots and turning it into a friendly competition with Jeremy to see who could outdo the other. I could recall the events leading up to the fifth shot, but after that, everything went blank. I thought about whether I should reach out to Jeremy and ask him what happened that night. Maybe he could shed light on the events that led to such a life-changing situation. I had a feeling that this might be some kind of elaborate prank by Samuel to make a dramatic New Year's statement, rather than something to panic about. I decided to wait until evening to see how everything unfolded before taking any action. Throughout the day, I had some fragmented memories come back to me, but they felt too disjointed to piece together. I couldn't shake the feeling that something significant had happened, likely involving Samuel. However, I knew that jumping to conclusions without solid evidence would only add unnecessary stress. I decided to remain calm and patient, waiting for the evening when I could gather more information and come up with a plan to distract myself. I decided to do some activities that might help clear my mind. I went for a long walk in the park, hoping the fresh air and calm surroundings would help me think more clearly. Despite my efforts, though, troubling fragments of memory kept resurfacing, leaving me feeling unsettled. I reminded myself that acting impulsively without a clear understanding of the situation wouldn't help. I didn't get much done that evening. I called Jeremy and asked if we could meet for a quick chat. I told him where I was going to be and suggested we meet in about 2 hours. When I got to the cafe, I had a coffee to help sober up. I was hoping it might help me remember things and give me some clues about Samuel's whereabouts. When Jeremy walked in, he came over to me. He gave me a hug, which felt a bit strange. I responded with an awkward smile and sat down across from him. Jeremy started by saying how excited he was about the party the night before. He said it was the best formal gathering he'd ever been to. He described it as wild and unforgettable. Then he asked about the state of affairs between Samuel and me. Jeremy told me about the night with Samuel. He said that Samuel hadn't seemed too pleased by the end of the night. That was the moment I'd been waiting for. I asked Jeremy to tell me everything that happened the night before. I didn't remember anything. Jeremy took a moment to think, but then he started to tell me all the details of the evening. He said we'd been in a drinking competition and Samuel had tried to stop me drinking. I'd pushed him away, saying it was a night for celebrating. I vaguely remembered shouting that the evening symbolized new beginnings, as we said goodbye to the old year and welcomed the new. I didn't realize that this New Year's Eve took a turn for the worse, as the clock struck midnight and fireworks illuminated the sky. I raised my glass in a toast, unaware that this would set off a chain of events that would turn my life upside down. After a heated argument with Samuel, he stormed out, leaving Jeremy came to see me afterwards to talk. I was trying to remember what had happened, hoping to find out what really happened between Jeremy and I. We carried on talking, and I started to tell him how frustrated I was because we'd both been drinking. If you want me to focus on anything else or make any changes, just let me know. If there's anything in particular you'd like me to focus on, just let me know. After that night, everything became a blur. I woke up the next morning to a house that was barely recognizable. Most of our belongings were gone. For a few seconds, I couldn't even believe I was in my own home. Nearly everything had vanished. For a brief moment, I thought I'd been robbed while I slept. My head was pounding from a hangover as I stumbled through the house searching for Samuel. The deeper I explored, the more it sank in that Samuel wasn't just gone. He'd taken almost everything with him. The only thing left in the entire house was our bed. I tried calling him, but his phone was off. I was in a panic. I splashed water on my face, hoping to sober up and make sense of what had happened. That's when I saw it. A note from Samuel sitting on the counter. It read, "Congratulations on starting the new year with fresh beginnings and new people." I was stunned at first. I couldn't even process what I was reading. Was this some kind of... I kept reading the note, trying to make sense of it, but I was just confused. I felt disbelieving and abandoned. I looked around the house, hoping for some clue about what had happened, but there was nothing. The note was all I had. My mind was racing. Why would Samuel leave without warning? Why now? It didn't make sense. I was confused. Why would Samuel leave without warning? Why now? It didn't make any sense. I was taken aback by his sudden disappearance. I was left wanting answers. I sat down and tried to gather my thoughts, replaying the events of the night before in my head. We had been drinking with Jeremy, turning it into a competition. I remember up until the 5th shot, but after that, everything went blank. I thought about contacting Jeremy to fill in the gaps and help me figure out what happened. Part of me wondered if this was just an elaborate prank by Samuel. I decided not to panic and to wait until the evening to see if more pieces of the puzzle would fall into place. Flashes of memory returned, but they were foggy and scattered, too fragmented to make sense. I still couldn't shake the feeling that something significant had occurred. I had a feeling something related to Samuel had happened, but I didn't have all the facts. I knew that jumping to conclusions wouldn't help and would only make things worse. I told myself to stay calm and focus on the present. I decided to distract myself, hoping that giving my mind a break might allow things to become clearer later on. I went for a long walk through the park. I tried to distract myself with a walk in the park, hoping the fresh air would help. But no matter how hard I tried, fragments of the previous night kept creeping back, leaving me feeling uneasy despite my growing anxiety. I knew it wouldn't help to make impulsive decisions, so I worked on keeping my composure. Later that evening, I finally decided to reach out to Jeremy. I asked if we agreed to meet up to talk, and I suggested a nearby cafe. He said he'd come, and I was hoping this meeting would help me understand what had gone so wrong. When I arrived, I ordered a coffee, hoping it would help me remember what happened when Jeremy walked in. He gave me a hug, which felt a little odd. I gave him a polite smile and took my seat across from him. He seemed cheerful, saying the previous night's party had been one of the best he'd ever attended. He described it as wild and unforgettable, then asked about Samuel, noting that he didn't seem too happy by the foretelling. By the end of the night, that comment made me realize I needed answers, so I asked Jeremy to walk me through everything that had happened, as my memory of the night was hazy. Jeremy hesitated for a moment before launching into a detailed recount of the evening. Apparently, we had all been doing shots, and at some point Samuel tried to this hand. I told him to stop me from drinking more. I had pushed him away, saying it was New Year's Eve, and I deserved to celebrate that much. I vaguely remembered shouting about how the night was meant for new beginnings and leaving the past behind. I didn't realize that this New Year's celebration would turn into a nightmare, as the clock struck. It was midnight and fireworks lit up the sky. I had raised my glass, unaware of the storm that was about to hit. After a heated argument, Samuel had stormed out, leaving Jeremy to console me. Jeremy recounted the details, and I tried to piece together my own fragmented memories, hoping to uncover what exactly had led to this. In a surprising turn of events, I could only remember flashes of an argument, some shouting, and the overwhelming feeling that things had spiraled out of control. Jeremy and I continued talking, and I began to vent my frustrations. My words slipped out easily, fueled by the fog of intoxication from the night before. We both lost our judgment that night, and before I knew it, Jeremy and I ended up crossing a line when Samuel returned. After cooling off, he found us together in that compromising state. Understandably, he was furious. He physically separated us and escorted me out of the club, standing with me until a taxi arrived. When we arrived, Jeremy told me that was the last he saw of us and assumed we'd gone home. Afterward, I sat in silence, stunned by what I had just heard. I tried to piece together my scattered thoughts and see if I could remember anything more. Then Jeremy asked me about the status of my relationship with Samuel. Without thinking, I told him it wasn't as bad as it looked. I said that Samuel had asked to meet up later to work things out. Jeremy looked at me skeptically, sensing I wasn't being entirely honest. He encouraged me to open up, offering his support, but I could tell he was reluctant. I told him about the confusing mess. That had become my relationship with Samuel. I was hoping that talking it through might help me make sense of the chaos in my mind as I poured out my feelings. Jeremy listened quietly, offering comfort and understanding. He reassured me that feeling overwhelmed was normal, and that seeking help was a sign of strength. His words gave me a tiny glimmer of hope that maybe with his help, I could navigate through the wreckage of my relationship with Samuel. Looking back on that disastrous night, I couldn't help but reflect on how easily the boundaries between my personal and professional lives had blurred. It all started innocently enough, with a few drinks at a New Year's Eve work party, but things quickly got out of hand. Jeremy and I had been drinking for a while, and in the heat of the moment, we lost our professionalism. Now I'm sitting in an empty house that's been stripped of nearly everything except for a mattress. It's been 2 days, and there's still no sign of Samuel. I don't know where he is or what to do next. Should I file a missing person report? Did Samuel leave voluntarily to get some space and clear his head, or is there something more serious going on? I'm overwhelmed and uncertain. I'm writing this in the hope that anyone who's been in a similar situation can give me some advice. Should I wait or take action? Any guidance or support would be appreciated. Based on some of your feedback, it seems Samuel might just need space to process everything. I've decided to respect that and give him the time he needs. But it's now been 3 months since he left, and I still have no idea where he is. I've reached out to his workplace, but they told me he's been working remotely and couldn't provide any information about his location. It's really frustrating, and I'm feeling pretty desperate. I've been trying to find out where he is by contacting our mutual friends, but they don't know anything either. It's been months since I've heard from him. This disappearance is getting more and more worrying. I have so many questions, and I'm feeling really uneasy. I've sent Samuel several emails explaining what's going on and hoping he would reply. Unfortunately, he's blocked me on every other platform, so email is my only way of communicating with him. On top of that, I'm also feeling the financial pressure. I'm the one who's handling the mortgage payments on my own. With the increased bills and a few items I had to buy after Samuel took almost everything, it's becoming really tough. I'm at a loss for how to manage the growing expenses, and I've started to consider seeking professional help or exploring other ways to ease the financial burden. Emotionally, it's a lot to handle. Samuel's absence has been really tough. I'm feeling pretty abandoned and unsure of what the future holds for us. Jeremy has become a bit of a sounding board during this time. He's been really supportive, but he does blame himself for how things have turned out. I told him it wasn't his fault. I told Jeremy that I thought this whole situation was my own fault and that I was really frustrated. He listened to me, and was really supportive, but I still had this feeling that maybe Jeremy was responsible for what had happened. Despite my doubts, Jeremy's support has shown me that true friendship is about sticking by each other through hard times, no matter who's at fault. During one of our conversations, Jeremy shared his own struggles and past mistakes, and he made it clear that we all make decisions that lead us down different paths. His empathy helped me realize that while Jeremy may have influenced some of my choices, the outcome was ultimately the result of my own actions. We promised to support each other in making better decisions and creating a better future for ourselves. Just as I was about to express my gratitude and hug Jeremy for his support, the front door opened. Samuel walked in looking angry. He accused me of lying about not having an affair with Jeremy and claimed he now had proof of what I'd done during Samuel's absence. He confessed that he'd read the emails I'd sent him, almost convincing himself that maybe he'd been wrong about the affair. But when we tried to explain and make him see reason, Samuel became increasingly agitated. He didn't want to hear it. He told us he'd been keeping an eye on the house and noticed Jeremy's frequent visits. He even went as far as accusing Jeremy of having a spare key to the house. That accusation set me off. I snapped, expressing my frustration and telling Samuel I was done with being hinged. I was accused of something I hadn't done. I told him if he couldn't trust me, he was free to leave because I wasn't going to waste my time proving my innocence over and over. Samuel laughed bitterly, mocking me and calling me a great actor. Then he walked out. I collapsed to the floor. I was devastated by how shallow Samuel's trust in me had become. 6 months have passed since that last confrontation with Samuel. I had hoped he would take some time to reflect and maybe come back once I had vented my frustrations, but I was wrong. His behavior only got worse. He kept sending letters, claiming he knew everything about me and Jeremy. I thought the best response was to ignore him, because I believed that would be the most effective way to end his provocations. Gradually, the letters stopped coming. I assumed that he'd finally understood that I wasn't going to play his game anymore. One evening after a long day at work, I was sorting through the mail and came across an unfamiliar letter. The handwriting was unmistakable. It was from Samuel. My curiosity spiked and my heart raced. Maybe this was a sign that things were going to change. It was a turning point. Maybe we could finally have the conversation we needed, with cautious hope. I opened the letter, but what I found inside wasn't reconciliation. It was divorce papers. My hands trembled as I read through the documents, trying to make sense of what was happening. A wave of emotions flooded me: anger, confusion, sadness. Why had it come to this? What had gone so terribly wrong that Samuel felt this was the only option? I searched the letter for clues, an address, something that might give me insight into where Samuel was. Maybe if I could talk to him, we could work things out despite everything. Despite everything he'd put me through, I still thought we could work things out. I didn't want our marriage to end like this. I just wanted a chance to make things right. Looking back, I never imagined that a single careless moment, getting drunk and kissing my boss, would unravel my entire life. I never expected Samuel to react by becoming so distant, passive-aggressive, and abandoning me without even a conversation. Now I'm struggling to deal with the fallout of that night, desperately trying to understand why he reacted so drastically. It's heartbreaking. It's made me realize that one mistake, one lapse in judgment, can destroy the trust we've spent years building. This experience has been a harsh reminder of the importance of clear boundaries, especially between our personal and professional lives. I've come to terms with the fact that I have to set those boundaries for myself. The mix of alcohol, work, and personal relationships was a dangerous cocktail that led to devastating consequences. I've learned the hard way that when these lines blur, it can take a serious toll on your well-being. It's about being aware of what's going on around you and your relationships. Stay one step ahead of cheaters. Trust me, the next story is even more shocking.